Cloud. Well, welcome everybody to our first speaker series of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We are going to be commemorating different No Beginning services, learning more about them, and how anybody can get involved or support us. So today we are kicking it off with just hearing from our CAP program, our social change program, a little bit about Home Safe, but our Home Safe program is not here. You'll get to hear more about them as we go through the month. But if you have any questions about things that you haven't heard today, feel free to always email me at Neba Zaidi. My first name is N. My first letter initial is N. My last name is Zaidi, and Zaidi at newbegins.org. It will be in the bio of this video. But you're always welcome to check in with any of our other staff members as well. So today I have Hilary from our social change program and Danielle. Do you want to share a little bit more about yourselves, what you do here at New Beginnings and for fun?
I can go first. Yeah. And for fun part, wasn't expecting, but I like that. So I'm the social change program manager at New Beginnings. I've been with the agency for about a decade in various capacities, providing direct service with survivors the first few years, and then several years working in our prevention program. I'll talk a little bit more about the program later, but what I do for fun is play with my kid, play with my dog, and probably karaoke and board games, although karaoke out in public isn't so much a thing, but doing karaoke at home is one of my favorite activities.
Hi, I'm Danielle D. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the director of our community advocacy program, and I've been with New Beginnings for a little bit over 5 years now. For fun, I have 2 little kids, so lots of fun with them. I have a 3-year-old and a almost 10-month-old. So I don't know if there's like a lot of fun that I get to choose, but lots of fun for little kids. So a lot of momming when I'm not at work.
So tell us more about your programs. What are the services that you all provide? Who are the communities you work with?
Yeah, so we have kind of the core of the social change program at New Beginnings is we are in 8 Seattle public middle schools where we run 12-week healthy relationships curriculum. And so this curriculum kind of builds on itself and just, anything to do with healthy relationships, kind of starting from like the big picture, gender roles, gender stereotypes, systems of like power and control in society, systems of oppression, and then kind of moving into interpersonal and seeing how those things play out in interpersonal relationships, but obviously in age appropriate ways. So we talk about, how to identify like both healthy and like signs of healthy and unhealthy dating relationships. We also can talk a little bit about how that, applies to friendships also, because we're in middle schools, and friendships also can lay a groundwork for dating relationships. So we try to have a lot of flexibility with where kids are at, while also preparing them for having, actual dating relationships moving forward. We talk a lot about things like, how do you know the difference between flirting and sexual harassment? What does consent look like? How do you know if you're respecting somebody's boundaries, and how can you make sure that you're communicating your own boundaries? So we talk about a lot of really big stuff, and we try to do it in ways that are, even though it's really serious topics, we make it a lot of fun for the kids too. And then beyond that, so we're in 8 schools, which is newer, so we're growing. But we're also trying to have more in-depth partnerships in our schools, and we piloted kind of a healthy relationship zone in one of our partner schools, Robert Eagle staff. And so there we've got, we've been doing teacher trainings, like professional development trainings, workshops for parents. We have a teen leadership council. It's our first teen leadership council, which is really huge. And we want to go in the direction of having our work be more, more youth led and youth directed. And then over the summer, Neba, who's on the social change team, actually helped organize our first ever youth empowerment retreat, which was really wonderful. And we were able to bring in some of the young people, both from middle schools and high schools that we'd worked with throughout the past few years, and like give them an opportunity to meet each other and to gain leadership and peer education skills. And also just have some more foundational healthy relationships stuff. So yeah, that's a big piece of it. And then we also have our community engagement and outreach piece. So we have a lot that's going on with young people in middle schools. And then we also are trying to work more in depth with high schools and college students, and with adult professionals and community members and people who want to know what to do, like how to respond to domestic violence, how to prevent domestic violence, how to support people in their lives. So we're kind of literally all over the place, you know, Neba's and farmers markets all over the city. We're trying to identify partnerships, you know, be really open to new partnerships and see where we can build and just really find champions in the community and folks who want to help us in preventing domestic violence. So there's a lot more I could say, but I'm going to stop there.
And hi, I know we have a new member with us. So just to kind of refresh folks, we're talking about what the programs we have offered and what services we are providing. Danielle, would you like to speak a little bit more about the CAP program?
Sure, yeah, happy to. So our community advocacy program provides domestic violence support to survivors in our community. We provide individual advocacy, which includes a lot of different things, but emotional support, safety planning, connection to resources, some financial assistance. We also provide support groups that cover topics like healing, power and control, grief, communication. Those are chosen by the survivors that are in the group. So the topics vary week by week. We also provide support to survivors and their children within our youth and family programming, which also provides a dedicated support group that covers parenting. Our CAP team also houses our legal advocacy for all of New Beginnings. Our legal team supports legal needs of our CAP and Home Safe programs. They're provided with support for domestic violence protection orders, parenting plans, immigration support, referrals to our community legal partners. We also facilitate every week the King County Bar Association Family Law Clinic, which provides legal advice to community callers who have family law issues. They don't need to be participants of New Beginnings. They can be in our community just looking for support around family law issues. We also house and facilitate our technology-enabled coercive control clinic, which is for survivors of intimate partner violence who are experiencing technological abuse. And that, again, is for any community member that's experiencing tech abuse. All of our clinics are remote. And so one of the great things about our tech clinic is that there's no geographical boundaries. So we're able to serve people that are experiencing tech abuse in other states. It's only one of 2 in the country. So we're really fortunate to have that resource. We're also in the process of building out our rapid rehousing program, which has been long awaited for our community members. So that will be able to provide ongoing rental assistance and dedicated housing support and advocacy. So we are very much looking forward to kicking that off. Yeah, that's just an overview of our CAP team.
And I know that we don't have Home Safe represented here, but I feel like sometimes people can get our community advocacy program and our Home Safe program confused. Can you share what might be the big differences? Are there things that Home Safe provides that CAP does not?
Yeah, I'm happy to pinch hit for Home Safe. So our Home Safe program is our residential program. And so it provides short-term housing support, Bridge being the 17-unit housing program, which houses survivors and their families that are fleeing domestic violence. It's, it can be loosely called our shelter. It's a different model than our old residential shelter, but it is our housing program at New Beginnings. Everyone that lives at Bridge is also provided with a group of advocates who work in tandem to provide support to the survivors that are living there. So they're geared up with a survivor advocate, a housing advocate, a youth and family advocate, and a legal advocate as needed. Survivors work holistically together to provide support to survivors, also able to provide financial support and work with survivors to figure out a next step after Bridge, so after living at the housing program. The housing advocates are able to provide rapid rehousing support to survivors and also provide ongoing advocacy. So similar to our CAP team, but the Home Safe program is working with people that are living at the Bridge program.
Thank you. I also have heard, I just want to update folks that Zoe, it might be on her way. Zoe's going to be representing the Hope Line, but she's having internet issues. So if you are curious to hear more about the Hope Line, come next week. Next Thursday, we'll be able to talk more in depth about what they have. So in your programs, what are some of the biggest resources your participants need? What are some of the biggest needs that you're seeing? What are the requests?
Sure. So our biggest kind of ask is general advocacy, but within that general advocacy, we really have a big need for legal support and legal representation, which is something that we need more of in our community and more of as a resource in general. Housing is a big concern. We know that homelessness looks different for survivors of domestic violence. And so oftentimes we have people that are living in unsafe housing situations or are currently experiencing homelessness or are doubled up with family members and just are not in sustainable living environments. And so housing is a big need for survivors that we're working with, along with financial assistance. I think one of the things that I don't know that everyone always thinks about is how much financial support is needed to rebuild someone's entire life after experiencing domestic violence. And so financial assistance, we know that financial abuse is very, very common in domestic violence relationships. And so having access to financial assistance is a really important and valuable part of our program. And so we're able to provide direct assistance to survivors for a multitude of different things. But sustainability is one of the main pillars that we're always working toward with survivors.
What about you, Hilary? I know that you all work broadly with the community at large, students, youth activists. What are some of the things that your participants need?
Yeah, it's a big question. I think young people need more support from adults. And there are I think so many adults. I think most adults would want to be supportive. But I also think, a lot of adults haven't, had healthy, really maybe spent a lot of time thinking about, how they model healthy or unhealthy relationships, behaviors, or thinking about what could teen dating violence look like. And I think, just having greater awareness and buy-in from adults in the community makes a huge difference, and kind of having those champions in school communities, youth serving organizations, folks where, because we can give we can provide a lot of work with kids and provide a lot of our messaging and teach around healthy relationships. But if we're not going to be with those kids every day, that it's important that the people in their lives are able to kind of back that up. And so that's part of the reason that we're trying to go more in depth in one school at a time, so that, ideally we're able to kind of get at all levels of a school community and have some shared messaging. But I think just broadly, that's really important, and also being believed and supported by adults, because there are a lot of times where students are encountering things like sexual harassment at school, for example, that are minimized by adults, or maybe adults think students are being, just trying to get attention or being dramatic. And there's just a lot of stuff that comes into play that, I think adults need more support in how they can support young people, I think is what I'll say.
Yeah, because this is like an intergenerational issue, when we think about domestic violence, we only replicate what we know. And if we're not familiar with how to do things healthier, we become older, and then we become the adults that work with younger people and like aren't able to show them the way. And I know you mentioned before in team meetings, Hilary, that when we work with teachers, oftentimes we forget that they have their own lives, that they have their own DV experiences that might come up in trying to support young people too. What are the biggest gaps that your programs are experiencing?
So our biggest gap is oftentimes the disconnect between what our survivors are experiencing and what's available to them in our community. We work within systems, and so just recognizing that there's systemic barriers that our survivors are very much immersed in, racism, ableism, sexism, homophobia, those are not erased and are very much impact how our survivors live in this world, and how much domestic violence changes based off of those barriers. And so we're very much working within those systems. We also are working with limited resources for housing, legal representation, sustainability, for financial freedom. We know that the financial assistance that we are able to provide is oftentimes a drop in the bucket in terms of how much is needed to rebuild for safety. Our legal system in general, we know that it takes many, many, many years oftentimes to get movement on legal cases, especially around immigration. And so we are working against systems that are much larger than our program. And so advocating for your survivor and also advocating for change within systems is our biggest need and our biggest gap, which is why I'm glad that we're talking about this, because it's a much larger community driven thing than just our advocates that are working within our community.
Yeah, it would be cool if we didn't have to change all these systems. Yeah, I think similarly, just because I think a little bit what I already spoke to, just like working in public school systems, there's only so much that we can, there's so much that we can do. And then, just a lot of other voices, and policies in the mix. I will say for prevention, we're often just because there's not like the urgent need, that like a survivor who's like needs a safe place to go right now. The urgency is different. And for that, but for that reason, like often we tend to, just get the least funding, and that means that we don't have the capacity to be in all of the schools that we'd like to be in. So, and not just schools beyond that, but looking beyond that to be in all the schools and community spaces that we would like to be in and be a part of. and to, just do that more in depth. So I think, yeah, there's just gaps around where we are able to go. And we often have requests that we're not able to meet, or we're not able to meet to the degree, so if a new school would like, our 12-week curriculum, we can still go in and maybe do like 1, 2, 3 sessions with students. So we can still definitely try to build a partnership, but not as in depth as we would want, or as the school might want. And I think some other gaps too, just in our program is, like, I would like more like, I'd like some of our educators to be bilingual in the future. Also folks who could more easily build rapport with boys. That's something that I think is a big, a gap, not just in our program, but in many dating violence prevention programs. Our groups are all gender, and I think work, generally work really well. And, a man, talking to young boys is going to have a different impact, and it's going to be heard differently. So those are some things that come to mind, but I'm sure there's many more gaps than that.
Something you were kind of saying, Danielle, made me think about how a lot of times with the work that we do with social work, people can overinflate the role of an advocate by assuming that we're a superhero and that we can do everything, and that when there's a willpower that we can overcome all the systems. But the reality is, as much as we really love and have the passion for our work, like, we do face a lot of structural barriers. And so there needs to be a lot more support than what we can provide to our survivors from the community. So what would you, in the future, like, how would you encourage community members to support our work, whether it is actually at New Beginnings or supporting the domestic violence movement as a whole?
Yeah, I love this question. And it kind of, as Hilary was kind of talking about the support that adults need to support young people, it really goes along with my answer to this question, which is really talking to the people in your life that are survivors, that are experiencing domestic violence or have experienced domestic violence, and really connecting with them. And I think doing your own healing is really powerful, and understanding that healing is, a journey, and you really, the final step of healing is integration. And it doesn't mean that your trauma goes away. It just means that it becomes a part of you, and it's something that you're carrying daily. And talking about domestic violence, we know that domestic violence loves darkness and silence. And so the more that we can talk about it, the more that we can look at it and understand what it does, is really important. And, Hilary will talk more about prevention, I'm sure, but not turning away from it when you have a feeling that someone in your life is experiencing it, and speaking up, being aware of what's going on in your community, joining in when called to is really important. Just being aware of those systemic barriers that are in place, and that if I were to experience domestic violence as a white woman, it would look very different. And understanding that my experience is not the experience of every survivor. And so just being mindful and aware of really what your support can do for someone in your life. So we welcome you in whatever capacity you have, but we are not everywhere as advocates. And so we really need to multiply in our community.
Sorry, Neva. I have a very similar answer, Danielle. So yeah, that's pretty on the nose. Like, if folks just talk about it more, and and reach out to us if they want help talking about it, because it can be difficult to start to have those conversations with anybody in your life. It can be maybe feel particularly difficult to have those conversations with your teenager. I've had parents who are like, have picked up our materials and been like, oh my gosh, I need this because I don't know what to do. I don't know how to talk about these things. And yeah, I think just like you said, like having those kind of, informal like champions and ambassadors and like people who like carry it beyond us, like, and can just kind of branch out in the community is so huge. And yeah, exactly what you said, not being silent, talking about it with other adults and just people in your life, and kids, and you're watching a TV show with your 12-year-old, and you're kind of asking questions about what's happening in the dynamics, and what about this feels healthy, what about this feels unhealthy, and just being intentional about integrating this conversations about relating and healthy relating into life. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like what you both said about just having really open conversations, because I think people forget the biggest changes they can make are right around them. They are directly within their community. It's directly within the people they already know. And they don't have to take much time out of their day. Like you said, when you're watching TV, when you're talking about family, from the moment we're born to the moment we die, we always have relationships. So there's never a time that's too early. There's never a time that's too late. I do notice, I don't want to put our folks on the spot here, but I do know we have some other members of New Beginnings who really work with community members. Paige and Haley, since you all work with building relationships with community members, how do you see other community members getting involved in the work? Only if you feel comfortable answering.
I was just my name is Paige. I'm the donor relationship manager at New Beginnings, and I've been noticing, or people have been asking me questions about how we partner, because DV is so big. And in speaking with one of our home safe advocates about a survivor, she explained the different people that we depend on to work with us. The Northwest Justice Project, API Chaya, how people dovetail into our work. And it was completely fascinating to me. And it's an interesting topic to know more about.
We're a village of resources. I really think we can't do this alone. We need other organizations to partner with who have really similar values and different ways of approaching the work too. So I have one last question before we close out today, but I know all of us have had chances and opportunities to work in this field and organization for a few years. What have you learned from working with survivors and your participants?
I love this question. I'm on year 12 of working with survivors of DV. And I continue to learn and really be graced with how resilient survivors are, and how much healing, like just how healing looks so different for survivors and for kids and for families, and just how survivors are so generous with their learning as well, and just everything that they share and just reveal of themselves. And it's always just such a gift when you're able to connect with a survivor and have them share what they've experienced. I think just kind of building off of what we've been talking about too, which is how much community and family support makes such a big difference for survivors that are able to have those connections and are able to maintain connection with family, with friends, because we know isolation is such a huge part of domestic violence. And just having survivors that are able to have supportive families, have supportive friends, and how different that can feel versus having that taken away, and just the utter destruction of having this relationship really eat every part of your life. And so I know we continue to kind of bring that up, but how important it is for friends and family and community to continue to rally and support survivors.
Yeah, I think working with primarily young people for the last several years in like more like the educational setting, group setting. So I've learned a lot about adultism. Before I started working in this role, prevention at New Beginnings, I don't think I'd really thought much or even heard about adultism as a concept. And throughout my time working with young people in this context, where it's a lot of back and forth, and like you're like a big part of the groups is learning from each other, and the students are learning from each other, and we're learning from the students, and we're getting their perspectives, and just hearing, really like understanding as best as I can as an adult, like how deep that runs and how harmful it is to young people, and how it plays into like this minimizing, like it, and minimizing, denying, and blaming, and gaslighting, and it's likely not intentional from adults, but there needs to be just such a reframe in how we orient to children and teens and young people, especially if we want to move forward in modeling healthy relationships that are about equity and not power and control. Like we have to figure out how to navigate that and do that differently so that we're setting kids up for success in their relationships. And beyond that, really just, I don't know if learned is the right word, but like being instilled with a lot of hope, working with young people who have such strong, like righteous opinions about the ways that things aren't working and the ways that things should be, and who have so much joy and fun and levity, while also like having this pretty deep understanding of how, the troubled spots we're in as a society. They're just really inspiring and give me a lot of hope that, the sounds really cheesy, but the world, or at least this country or this part of the country, is moving in a better direction. So yeah, they're very inspiring.
Yeah, there's a lot to be learned from post-traumatic resilience. Post-traumatic growth is real. Well, that's all we have for today. I just want to thank everybody who showed up, anybody who's listening to this recording in the future. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions. We hope that we see you again at our speaker series. But once again, thank you so much, Hilary from our social change program, and Danielle from our CAP program, our community advocacy program. I really appreciate you all making the time to share more about your services with the community.
Thank you.
Okay.